Today I'm going to dive headfirst into the world of carbs, the good, the bad, the ugly, and why certain types of carbohydrates wreak havoc on our hormones more than others, especially through menopause. But first, full disclosure, I happen to be a big fan of carbohydrates. They're a big part of my diet and a big reason why I am as healthy as I am. But it's the type of carbs that I eat that make a big difference in my body's ability to stay healthy, maintain good energy levels, and maintain the best hormonal balance possible for my body, especially at this time in my life. Now, I think you know as well as I do that not all carbohydrates are the same, and it's worth knowing what's good for your body and what's not so good for your body. I'm going to lay it all out for you right now. I want you to understand how so many of the carbs that we see in the store today do nothing but throw our hormones into a tornado of confusion, even the carbs that are labeled as low fat, low sugar, or good for you. In case we haven't met, my name is Tracy D. Mitchell. I am a board certified Mayo Clinic health and wellness coach, and I'm the author of a book called The Belly Burn Plan. I hold a master's degree in health and nutrition education, and for the last 20 years, I have been working with women like you, helping you live your healthiest life. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get regular video updates, each created with your health in mind. So what's the deal with carbs anyway? Well, since the late 90s and probably before that, carbs have gotten somewhat of a reputation. Back then, the word on the street was that carbohydrates make you gain weight and body fat. Today, there's a close association between carbohydrate consumption and diabetes. The fact of the matter is that a lot of carbs can make you downright unhealthy and are rightfully associated with diabetes. In a vacuum, this is true, but there's so much more to the picture than just this. For decades, carbohydrates have been talked about in a this versus that sort of way, or good versus bad. Complex versus simple, and refined versus unrefined are probably two of the most common ways you've heard carbohydrates referenced. Today, though, I'm going to refer to these two groups as ultra-processed and minimally processed. Minimally processed carbs are very close to their whole food form and come from foods like fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. They're close to their natural state, meaning they retain most of their nutrients, fiber, beneficial compounds, and things of that nature that help you keep your hormones and metabolic processes running smoothly. For example, sliced strawberries that you buy from the store, or a bowl of old-fashioned oatmeal, maybe a can of chickpeas that are added to a salad, or a slice of sprouted grain bread. These are all examples of minimally processed carbohydrates. They're really close to their natural form. Maybe you didn't pick the strawberries from the field yourself, but those strawberries are mighty close to what they looked like from the field. And that's the thing with minimally processed carbs. For our convenience, these types of carbs often need to be packaged, shelled, sliced, or soaked in water to make them more accessible for us. Let's take a look at long-cooked brown rice, for example. If you look on the back of the bag or box of rice that it comes in, you'll see the ingredient list. This ingredient list, as far as rice goes, is probably just one thing, rice. That's pretty minimal if you ask me. This is generally true for most minimally processed foods. While they may have more than one ingredient, they're usually pretty minimal, basic, and easy to pronounce. Water, salt, yeast are a few ingredients that you might see. On the other hand, ultra-processed carbs go through a lot of manufacturing. They're built for survival. They're stripped of their nutrient value, and they often have different forms of sugar, unhealthy fats, and preservatives added to them. They're designed to taste great and last a really long time on the shelf. But just because something tastes great does not mean that it's good for you. When you think of ultra-processed foods, think of fast food, frozen dinners, canned soups, store-bought cookies, most white bread, boxed macaroni and cheese, soda. I think you get the point. While they might be convenient, these types of ultra-processed carbs can spike your blood sugars and leave you feeling hungry shortly thereafter. So as far as the bottom line between these two, minimally processed carbs nourish your body, while ultra-processed carbs are more likely to cause energy crashes, cravings, and hormonal disruption. But speaking of hormones, ultra-processed carbs disrupt our hormones much in the same way a bowling ball knocks down pins. They get scattered around, and when one pin gets knocked down, other pins often follow. The same is true for your hormones. When you knock one hormone out of balance, it's very easy to knock the other hormones that are just as important out of balance too. The thing is, menopause already creates a significant change in hormones without the help of ultra-processed carbs, so the impact hits us much harder. We have dozens of different hormones that can be negatively affected by these types of carbs, but to keep things brief, I'll explain a little bit of how these types of foods affect a few important hormones to your health specifically: estrogen, insulin, and cortisol. When you eat ultra-processed carbs like sugary snacks, pastries, or white bread, your body quickly breaks them down into sugar, or glucose. This causes a spike in your blood sugar, and in response, your body releases a lot of insulin to bring the sugar back down. The problem is, when insulin levels are constantly high, the sugar insulin stores gets moved to your body's fat cells, especially in the belly area. I'll talk more about insulin in a moment, but for now, I really want you to understand how estrogen is affected. This is where estrone comes in. Estrone is a type of estrogen that's produced in fat tissue. During menopause, as your ovaries produce less estrogen in the form of estradiol, your body tries to compensate by producing more estrogen in the form of estrone from your fat cells. Estrone is a much weaker form of estrogen than estradiol and tends to be the problem child when it comes to fat storage. So the more fat you store, particularly around the belly area, the more estrone your body can produce. In a nutshell, even though a lot of ultra-processed carbs are billed as fat-free, eating them often leads to increased fat storage, which in turn can lead to higher levels of this estrone. Too much estrone can disrupt your hormonal balance during menopause, oftentimes worsening symptoms like weight gain, mood swings, achy joints, or even increasing your risk of other health issues like cancer. Ultra-processed carbs lead to more fat storage, more estrone, and more imbalance in the body during a time when it's already going through a big hormonal shift. By reducing ultra-processed carbs, you help limit fat storage and keep estrone production in check, which can make a big difference in managing menopause symptoms and staying healthier overall. Now I want to explain how ultra-processed carbs affect insulin through menopause. Insulin's job is to control your body's blood sugar levels, and when you eat ultra-processed carbs, which are again things like white bread, sugary snacks, soda, or sugary coffee drinks, your blood sugars spike up very quickly. Now, your pancreas releases insulin anytime blood sugar levels rise, but when blood sugars rise rapidly, your pancreas releases a lot more. And this is not good. For women going through menopause, this process becomes more of an issue as estrogen in the form of estradiol diminishes, your cells become less sensitive to insulin. This means that your body has to pump out even more insulin to get the same job done. Over time, this can lead to a situation called insulin resistance, where your cells start to ignore insulin altogether, forcing your body to keep producing more of it. Now, with insulin resistance, your body tends to store more fat, especially around the belly area, and this can make menopause symptoms worse. It also sets off another vicious cycle. Higher insulin levels lead to more fat storage, which leads to more estrogen being produced from the fat cells, specifically estrone, and this can throw your hormones even more out of whack. So when you're in menopause, ultra-processed carbs can hit you harder. Much harder. They not only spike your blood sugars, but also make it tougher for your body to manage insulin properly, contributing to weight gain, fatigue, and even worsening hot flashes. By cutting back on ultra-processed carbs, you help keep your body's insulin levels in check, which can make menopause symptoms easier to handle. Now, let's talk about cortisol, your body's stress hormone. During menopause, this hormone becomes even more influential in how your body manages stress, energy, and fat storage. Eating ultra-processed carbs can actually make cortisol levels spike, which is the last thing that you want when your body is already adjusting to the hormonal changes of menopause. Now, don't get me wrong, cortisol is really important, but when it gets released to help us manage physiological stress that it shouldn't have to, there's a really big downside. Here's how that works. When you eat these types of carbs, your blood sugar levels rise quickly and then crash just as fast. These blood sugar crashes signal your body that it's under stress, like it's under attack, triggering the release of cortisol to help bring things back into balance. The problem is when cortisol levels stay elevated, especially during menopause when hormone levels are already fluctuating, it can lead to a cascade of issues. For one, high cortisol levels can promote fat storage, particularly through the belly area. This type of fat, called visceral fat, is inflammatory and, as mentioned earlier, produces a form of estrogen called estrone that can further disrupt your already shifting balance of estrogen and other hormones. High cortisol can also worsen mood swings, increase anxiety, and mess with sleep patterns, all the things that can already be problematic during menopause. So, ultra-processed carbs act like a double stressor on your body. They spike insulin and blood sugars, but also push cortisol levels higher. For women in menopause, where managing stress is key to maintaining hormonal balance, eating fewer of these ultra-processed carbs can help reduce that cortisol roller coaster, leading to better mood regulation, less weight gain, and improved energy levels. By keeping ultra-processed carbs in check, you help to reduce cortisol spikes, allowing your body to handle stress more smoothly during menopause. Now you're probably wondering, well, what kind of carbohydrates are good for me to eat through menopause? Now I answer that question in detail in my next video, the best carbs to eat through menopause. Go ahead and check it out.